All right, welcome back to another episode of the Take Three podcast presented by IU Sports Media. Right here to my right, I'm probably to your left, Jack Grossman. Thank you for coming on. Of course, the big Louisville and Indiana fanatic. I mean, I had to have you on, of course.
Oh, happy to come on anytime, Jordan. Really appreciate it.
I know. Are you missing Bloomington, especially this year with all the magic going on around here
Oh,
right now?
absolutely. I miss, friends, people, going to games, normal life, but the restaurants up there. I miss a lot of things about Bloomington, for sure. I had a great 4 years, though. I can't complain.
I will say I do miss ZNC being open at the wee hours of
It's
the
still
morning.
not open?
Not in the wee hour. It's like closes like 10 or 11 p.m. It's terrible. But I mean, I don't know if you've seen Kirkwood looks great right now. I mean, they have the tents and it's really transformed. So that's been really good to see. And how's ESPN 680 treating you? And how's that run been? I mean, obviously you interned there and everything beforehand.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, I'm doing everything from behind the scenes stuff to board hopping, producing. I'm hosting a post game show for the IU Ohio State game tomorrow. So 267-9680 if anyone wants to call in by any chance. But that's going to be a lot of fun. That's the first time we're doing that at the station. So hopefully that can become more of a consistent fixture. We'll see, but just doing anything and everything I can, trying to move up, all the cliches, but it's been a lot of fun. There's a lot of great people there, and I'm very excited to be where I'm at.
Yeah. For everyone listening, ESPN 680, it's about a 3-minute walk maybe from the high school that Jack and I attended. I mean, I walk by there all the time. So it's pretty neat to be back in that area.
It really is, because at DuPont Manual where we went, we would have there's a strip of restaurants right there that right after school everyone would go to, like a Qdoba, Jimmy John's, Noodles, stuff like that. And I would walk by that station every day, and I was like, damn, I wish I had the guts just to knock on the door and ask them for an internship or something. And it is kind of cool. Not just I haven't made. I mean, like I'm an entry level person. I know that, yeah. but it's really cool to be working at a place that I really wanted to be at for a long time.
I have to ask though, did you get a parking pass now that you work there?
Yes, I finally have a parking pass. I can park on the garage. I don't need to pay for parking. I don't get parking tickets anymore. It is phenomenal.
Yes, for everyone listening, the parking is terrible around that Cardinal Town area. Like, I mean, it's obviously meters everywhere, and yeah, I'm sure that went up your bank account. So now you're finally cashing back in. So good to hear. But anyways, Jack, when before we went on here, I was talking about, I mean, when I heard these topics, I mean, obviously timely NBA draft, which we'll get to in a sec, and college basketball finally around the corner. And then, of course, IU Ohio State, you're doing post-game coverage, like you said, this weekend for it with the 680. I mean, it's definitely a lot to talk about. So we'll get right to it here. NBA draft this past Wednesday. We waited a long time for this, especially with, with the delay of the NBA season being pushed back and everything like that. And, it's just now the draft is finally come and gone, and it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround here with, the NBA season starting back up, I believe around Christmas time or right after.
Yeah, December 22nd.
Right. So, a lot of people had a lot of things to say about the draft. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the flashiest draft. Like last year, we saw guys like, Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett go at the top of the draft, and Ja Morant, of course, at 2 to Memphis. But this year, I mean, the names maybe weren't as star-studded, but I guess looking ahead here, trying to pull up the right question, whatever. But I guess what I was looking for is of the top 5 picks here of the draft, who will have, I guess, the most immediate impact for their
definitely
team?
James Wise. Yeah, definitely James Wiseman with Golden State. Of course, Klay Thompson getting hurt does take a blow to that, which that absolutely sucks to see him get hurt again. But James Wiseman is a guy that fills such an immediate need for the Golden State Warriors, being a big that's a rim runner that can run the floor well, has that 9'6" wingspan, absolutely insane. And we only saw him play, a couple of games for Memphis. So he hasn't played a basketball game in over a full year because of the whole NCAA fiasco with that, which was all BS. So we can talk about that another time. But he's a guy that fills a gaping hole for the Golden State Warriors. And if he can come in and be productive right away, he's a guy that can play big minutes on a playoff team that, at least before the Thompson injury, we don't know now, was one of the favorites to win the NBA Finals.
Right, and I'm thinking back, with Wiseman. I mean, obviously a big guy that could play the 5 and even shoot a little bit. I mean, when's the last time that the Warriors had, a big man that was, actually a productive player? I'm trying to think, Andrew Bogut, but no, not really.
I mean, Bogut was good for them. He was more of a defensive guy, though. Yeah. I would probably say early on in the Steph era, maybe when even Monte Ellis was still with Golden State, David Lee was really a big fixture for them. He wasn't a 5, but he was a post player. So I really think, and I love that half court shot, by the way, or not half court, but that buzzer beater, that was awesome. But
I know, yeah.
But David Lee's really the last big post presence they've had. They had David West at the end of his career, and he was a role player for him. But I'd probably have to go back to David Lee.
Yeah. So, rounding out the top 5, I mean, a lot of good players there, and honestly, one that I liked at 8. Is Obi Toppin going to the Knicks? I actually liked the Knicks draft. I felt weird saying it. I mean, it made sense. The Brooklyn native. I mean, getting a kind of a hometown guy. I really liked it. I thought the Knicks were kind of a winner for me. But who are, I guess, your big winners of the NBA draft?
Now, the Knicks are definitely one of them because Obi Toppin somehow slid to 8. Not really sure how that happened. I thought he'd go maybe even as high as 4, but probably 5-6 range. So I think he's a really good pick. He's not going to be a star, but he's a guy that can come in and start right away for New York and be someone flashy that they can market and sell. Emmanuel Quickley was a little bit of a reach for them. I think they got him at 21, but he's still a guy that's an elite shooter that can put the ball in the basket and has some ties with former Kentucky assistant Kenny Payne, Worldwide West is a Calipari guy. So a lot of ties to the Knicks staff and front office already, so it makes sense from that standpoint. And then them grabbing Miles Powell as an undrafted free agent, I think could be an absolute steal. I mean, how high I am on Miles Powell. He's a guy that already is an elite shot maker, an elite shot taker that has a ceiling of like a Lou Williams type of career in the NBA. I think they're big winners. I think the Washington Wizards might be my biggest winners. They got David Avdija. I really hope I'm saying his name right.
Kenny, the boy. Yeah, the Israeli.
Yes, out of Israel. I thought he could have gone as high as 4th to the Bulls, but he slides all the way to 9th, and they get him a guy that has a whole lot of potential to build around. That would be very nice to complement Bradley Beal there for Washington. And then you also pick up in the back end of that draft at 53rd, Cassius Winston, a guy like Miles Powell, isn't going to be a star in the league, but is a guy that's just so crafty, so good, does so many things well, such a smart player, to where I have no doubts that he will have a career in the NBA and that we'll look back 5-6 years from now and say, man, they got him as a pretty good steal at 53rd because he's a guy that's going to be a really good role player, maybe even a starter in the league. Cassius Winston doesn't have the physical measurements, is a little bit older, but does everything you would want out of a pure point guard. And then I'll even give the hometown team a little bit love. The Indiana Pacers only had 1 pick in this draft, but they take Cassius Winston. You get him at what, 54? Yes, Stanley. 54. Yes, Stanley, yes. You get Cassius Stanley, who, again, wasn't phenomenal at Duke, but he's an athletic freak. He shoots the 3 ball well, and there's a lot of potential for him to defend. So that's you could possibly be grabbing a very good role player that's insanely athletic with the 54th pick in the draft.
It's true. Gosh, seeing some of these college basketball highlights, even a court storming, I don't know. I mean, Notre Dame did against Clemson a few weeks back, but still, I forgot that Evansville beat UK. I'm going to be honest. Like that kind of slid to the back of my mind. I mean, in the Evansville coach getting fired, and
Walter McCarty.
I know, yeah, for real. But obviously, a lot of good things going on in the NBA draft. But I'm sure there were some losers as well. Some questionable picks. Even as a Cleveland fan at 5, I thought maybe Okoro was a stretch. Or I know, Bulls fans were kind of on the fence about getting Patrick Williams at 4. But I don't know. I mean, Billy Donovan likes the fit there, who's in Chicago for first year. And I saw an interesting quote about someone reached out to Leonard Hamilton, the head coach down at Florida State. And they're like, oh, he was a 6 man. He didn't start games. But he said his response to that was, oh, he was out there. He was finishing games. And that is true. So I guess were there any clear losers in your mind of the NBA draft?
I think you named two of them right there, the Bulls and the Cavs. Isaac Kuro, I think, definitely has a shot to make it in the league. But when you're Cleveland and you have so many holes that you're trying to fill, I'm not sure if defensive stopper is a thing that is really going to do too much for you right now. He's very limited offensively. He doesn't really bring much to the table on that end. So I feel like his role is more of a Tony Allen role, to where he can come in, be great defensively, but not really give you too much on the offensive end. And I just don't know what Cleveland really gains by picking him at 5th, because they're still just so far away from contending. And I didn't really like the Patrick Williams pick either for this reason. And this is what I said with Mitch Trubisky anyways. I don't think there's Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson sitting behind him, so I'm not going to bash it from that standpoint. But if you really want Patrick Williams, you could have traded down to the 8th or 9th pick, gotten him, and gotten maybe another first-round pick, gotten a role player, or gotten some extra bit of substance along with it. If that's the guy you really wanted, you trade down, you can get him later. You don't need to reach and take him at 4. And the same goes along the lines for Jalen Smith as well at Maryland. I loved Jalen Smith at Maryland. He does a lot of things that you want a modern big man to do. He's phenomenal in the pick and pop. Heck, Indiana fans saw that to a whole new level in the game back in Bloomington in January. But he's great on the pick and pop. He's really long. He's really athletic. He's a good rim runner. He runs the floor well. He's a good shot blocker. But you didn't need to take him at 10th. Phoenix should have traded down. They could have probably traded back to around 2021 and gotten him, and again, gotten more draft capital or a role player or two in addition to it. So it's not just who you pick, it's when you pick them. And I really thought the Bulls and the Suns really reached way too far for those draft picks.
Yeah, and maybe this was a kind of draft where no one really maybe was in love with someone who was willing to trade up super high. I mean, we didn't really see a whole lot of movement on draft night. And I think even so, I think the Jazz made a deal, late in the first round, but there wasn't too many trades. And yeah, I mean, Phoenix, again, looking back to last year, they get Cameron Johnston out of UNC, and a lot of people thought that was a high reach, and he turned out he's a role player for him, and I think they got him at 10 or 11 last year, I think, and they are getting Jalen Smith.
Yeah, but again, I love Jalen Smith. I think he definitely has a career in the NBA. It's just if you want him, even if he pans out, here's what the naysayers will say. It's like, great, he worked out. You could have gotten him later and still got another pick in it as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm surprised the Thunder maybe didn't try to get a couple more picks. I mean, they have about 150 first-round picks. So
yeah, I mean they'll have plenty in the future years as well, for sure. OKC for sure.
Definitely. I mean, you see it about my screen at 11. Devin Vassell, I think, is a perfect fit for that Spurs. I was like, that's such a Spurs pick, the kind of guy. I mean, I think Popovich will do very well with him. And then a guy like a Cole Anthony going to 15, I thought that was kind of intriguing to see him go to the Magic.
Yeah, I thought Devin Vassell going to San Antonio and then Trey Jones going to San Antonio in the second round, two very Spurs picks that I liked. I thought San Antonio could have gone the Cassius Winston route or the Miles Powell route instead of Trey Jones, but you can't complain with Trey Jones. He does a lot of things that Greg Popovich will like. And then Cole Anthony slipping to 15, I thought him and Tyrese Halliburton going to Sacramento at, I believe, 12 could be two real steals in the draft. Cole Anthony, of course, got hurt, missed most of the season for UNC. But when he was on the floor, he was really good for the Tar Heels. It wasn't the most efficient player ever, but definitely a guy with high ceiling. And then Halliburton, another guy plagued by injuries with Iowa State, was viewed as a top 5 or 6 pick before he got hurt. Him and De'Aaron Fox and Buddy Hield, who knows if Fox or Hield are going to be there long term. But for the time that we'll have it, it's a very fun dynamic to have all three of those guys sharing a backcourt in Sacramento. I thought, now if you're thinking of just steals of the draft, that might be the biggest one, Tyrese Halliburton to Sacramento.
That's interesting you say that. So outside of the lottery picks here, I mean, you see some of the notable picks. I was looking through the draft board. I really loved Miami's draft. I mean, I Precious Ashford, I think he's great for him. I mean, he was the only freshman, I think I read this, that won the Player of the Year award in his conference last year. And that's and he had a double-double, obviously, with Wiseman playing 2 games, like you said. I mean, it definitely, I think, opened more opportunities for him to kind of get into the spotlight. And I think he's going to be a great fit for that Heat team who, as we've seen, between drafting Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero in recent years. I thought they were getting Tyrese Maxey. It just seemed like, oh, go ahead and get another Kentucky guy.
Tyler Hero tweeted like 5 minutes before they picked, saying, "I feel Kentucky coming on," and I was like, "Oh, they're going to take Maxey." But they did take Precious Achiuwa and said, "I think that's a much better fit for them," because you saw it, especially when Bam got hurt in the finals. They really don't have that depth at the center position. Kelly Olynyk's serviceable. Myers Leonard's all right, but Achiuwa's a guy that does a lot of the same things that Bam does well. He's a high motor guy. Yeah, he's a little bit undersized, but he's uber athletic. I think that could be a really good pick for them long term to give them a really good 1-2 punch between Precious Achiuwa and Bam.
Yeah, and obviously, we love our Cardinals. Jordan Nwora going to 45 for the Bucks. I mean, how do you think that he'll fit into that system there?
I think going to the draft, I'm not just saying this because they might be the 2 best teams in the league, but I thought the 2 best fits for Nwora to come in and play immediately would have been either the Lakers or Milwaukee. And I say that because those are 2 teams that need more outside shooting and have such incredible, on-ball handling guys that are going to attract so much attention, with the Bucks, of course, being Giannis Antetokounmpo, and then you also have Chris Middleton as well, to where there's going to be so much energy and so much attention put on those guys. Jordan Nwora can just chill in the corner and shoot threes. And if there's one thing that Jordan Nwora does well, and it's the reason he got drafted, is because he is an elite three-point shooter that already has NBA range. What really hurt him throughout his career at Louisville was that he was always the number 1 option, and there was not really another guy that could create his own shot. So Nwora was a guy that, yes, he could do it, but his strength is really catch and shoot, working off ball screens, running around the court, trying to get open, and then again, catch and shooting. In Milwaukee, he won't ever have to create his own shot. Giannis will do all that for him. All he'll have to do is stand there and hit jumpers, and he can do that at a very high rate. So I honestly think he could play some for Milwaukee this year and has a chance to crack that rotation, even though he was 45th in the draft.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I mean, you see guys on this list like an RJ Hampton or Vernon Carey who were just so highly touted coming out of
RJ Hampton was a really good pick too. I think that's a good one for Denver because they need guys that can create their own shot to go next to Jamal Murray, and he's a guy that can do that.
Yeah, it's just kind of, I know it's interesting how as highly touted as they were coming into college. I mean, to fall, late in the first round, early second round, it was kind of surprising to see there. And a guy like a LaMelo Ball, who we haven't really talked about, I could care less, but I think he'll be, I don't know, I think he'll sell tickets. I mean, I saw that, Charlotte there, I've already seen an uptick in sales, and I don't know, a lot of people have a bunch of conspiracy theories that LeVar Ball just wants to play Michael Jordan one-on-one, so that's why Jordan drafted LaMelo. But
yeah, just so that MJ could show up. but I mean, like, you can hate LeVar Ball, and I hate LeVar Ball, but the man's had two not just first round, but 2 top 5 draft picks in a 4-year span. You got to give him some credit for that. He's doing something right. It's the only brother tandem to both go in the top 5, him and Lonzo Ball. So he's definitely doing something right. You got to give him at least some credit.
It's true. And then as far as the players that didn't hear their name on draft night, there were a lot of good names out there. Devon Dotson, Kansas, Marcus Howard. I'm like, how do you not? I mean, I think the size and I don't know, maybe the NBA body, not really, but I mean the resume and the pedigree there. I mean, I felt like he was deserving of a draft pick. And then Ashton Hagans, who you see, Emmanuel Quickly get drafted and Tyrese Maxey. But, I mean, really, it wasn't a really deep Kentucky draft, as maybe John Calipari is accustomed to seeing. No lottery picks for the first time in forever.
Yep, no lottery picks for Kentucky for the first time in 10 years. Duke didn't have a first-round pick for the first time since 2008, so you see a couple of streaks. And Hagans didn't really surprise me too much. He's a guy that can't shoot, and in the NBA, if you can't shoot, you don't have a job. But Howard and Miles Powell, again, those two were stars, especially Miles Powell, but Howard as well. Those 2 guys combined for over 5,000 points in their collegiate careers. And I get it, college success doesn't always translate to the pros, but they're guys that can create their own shot and can catch and shoot. There is always a role for guys that can do those 2 things, and they're pretty good playmakers as well. So I think those are 2 guys that I would not be shocked at all to see them crack into the NBA and be able to be role players. Again, Lou Williams type of guys are these guys' ceilings. And Lou Williams, again, 6th man of the year. There's nothing to be ashamed of being a Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford type of player. I really do believe that those guys can be those types of players because they are elite shooters and elite bucket getters, and you can never have enough of those in the NBA. So Marcus Howard goes to Denver, a little bit of a backlog there in the backcourt with Jamal Murray and Marcus Morris, and now Monte Morris, rather, and now RJ Hampton. But he's a guy that does a lot of the same things that Jamal Murray can do. He's just not as big as Murray. So I think I like that in terms of similarities going there. And then Miles Powell to the New York Knicks. I like that as well. You got a little bit the hometown thing going on. Powell's the guy that went to Seton Hall just across the river in Jersey. So I really do think that those two will be the two biggest steals out of the undrafted part of the draft.
So maybe just quickly here, maybe looking ahead to the end of the next NBA season, who do you see maybe becoming the Rookie of the Year? I mean, obviously a lot of things have to play out, but I guess maybe fit-wise and maybe ceiling.
I think James Wiseman has a good shot just because he's a guy that's going to be on a really good team, and we don't see that very often for rookies. So he's going to be able to get more exposure than normally a rookie would, unless that rookie is Zion Williamson. But it's a crapshoot, just because that's what's interesting about this draft. We don't really have that top talent. You saw a lot of college basketball last year too, which is why I wasn't surprised that everyone said, this is a bad NBA draft, because college basketball didn't have that high-end talent, which translates into the draft not having that high-end talent. But there's a lot of really good, productive players that could be good role players in the long view of things in this draft. So I don't really know. I think Wiseman would probably be my pick. Maybe Anthony Edwards, maybe LaMelo Ball. I mean, that's not fun just to say the top three picks. Avdija at the Wizards, I think, would be a good dark horse there. But yeah, it could be a lot of different guys.
Definitely. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I know you want to you're looking at your chops to get into college basketball here, and it's been we didn't know a date for a while. Hell, we didn't even know what I was waiting for Indiana's schedule around here in Bloomington. We're like, when's it coming out? And finally got the Big Ten schedule, I think, released on Wednesday or earlier this week, whatever it was. And see Gonzaga, the preseason number one, and Baylor's going to be good again. Iowa at 5 with Luka Garza, Luka Garza, right? Yeah. Is it Luke Garza? I don't know why I'm thinking.
Luka Garza.
Luka. Yeah. Luka, like Luka Doncic. Yeah. Luka Garza there, who's elite. And then, Duke and Kentucky, and even Illinois there at number 8. So I guess what are your biggest storylines heading into the college basketball season next year?
Well, I mean, you don't have a lot of the traditional blue bloods in that top 5 or 6. You got Kansas at 6, Kentucky and Duke all in the top 10. But I don't think Duke's going to be as good as they've been in the past. It's going to be – I think the biggest storyline is that you're going to have a lot of teams that aren't traditionally great be really good. I know we're used to Villanova being up there, where we've gotten used the past couple years of Virginia, but you don't have, again, Kansas or Duke or Kentucky, Michigan State in that top 5. A team like Illinois, who hasn't been great since 2005, I'm going to put them in my preseason Final Four. I think they're going to be spectacular. They have the best 1-2 punch of anyone in the country. If Iowa Dosunmu and Kofi Coburn, getting both those guys back, that's insane. Iowa, a team that hasn't been nationally relevant consistently forever, ever, has a chance to be really good. There's question marks on if they can defend or not. But I mean, you got Luka Garza, you got Jordan Bohannon coming back. They bring back all 5 of their starters. Wisconsin brings back all 5 of their starters on a team that won the Big Ten last year. Illinois, again, brings back, I think, 4 of their starters. Baylor brings back basically everyone. Villanova brings back everyone but Sadiq Bey. Virginia brings back everyone but Mamdi Diakite and Braxton Key, but they add Sam Hauser, a sharpshooter transfer from Marquette. That's a perfect fit for them. Gonzaga brings almost everyone back except for Killian Tilly, who was hurt most of the year last season anyways. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that we got a lot of people to come back in college basketball that we normally don't see. And I think experience may outweigh the freshman talent that we normally see. And that'd be a couple of years in a row. Now, last year was more because just the freshman class wasn't very good. But this season, it's a better freshman class, but we see a lot of people come back as well. I do think Kentucky at 10 is going to be really good. Yeah, they obviously got Olivier Sarr declared eligible, which is big news for them. BJ Boston, I think, could be the best freshman that could play on a team that can actually play in the NCAA tournament, unlike Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State. I think he's going to be phenomenal. So if you're looking at which one of those blue bloods I think has the best chance to make the Final Four, best chance to win a title, I'm definitely going Kentucky. I think they're going to be really, really good. Kansas, I think, does have a lot of potential as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think almost what we saw last year with, I remember how many times that number one ranking was kind of jumping around all season long. I think we could see a lot of movement at the top. I mean, like you said, a team like Illinois, who I think their ceiling is really high in the Big Ten, and I guess that leads us into Indiana, maybe a little Louisville talk. I was looking at the AP votes. Indiana would be ranked at 30, Louisville right behind them at 31, based on the votes. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment for these teams?
I think it was before Louisville got all the injury bugs they've had lately. I mean, Malik Williams is out for 12 weeks. At the
Yeah.
least, he may be out the entire season. Louisville doesn't have another center on its roster. Aina Gahan is a guy that's kind of been disappointing so far. The coaching staff still doesn't trust him. They bring in I'm not even going to try to say his name, but I will. Is Gabe Wisnitzer, a center who they were playing on redshirt? He's going to have to play a lot of minutes at the 5 because Malik Williams is out. They may go small, play Jalen Withers at the 5. Sam Williamson's missing some time. He just got back to practice. Charles Minlin is out for 6 weeks. So I think Louisville at 31 is a little high when you factor in all the injuries. I think they might be like on the 9 or 10 seed line in the NCAA tournament when all things are said and done. Indiana, I think, is a pretty good spot at 30 because there's a lot of unknowns for them. Yes, they bring a lot of guys back, but there's two questions. One, does Christian Lander work out for them? Is he ready and able to face Big Ten competition? Is he physically ready for that? If he is, then Indiana has that guy that, again, can create his own shot, get other people open, and draw attention to the defense and open things up for Chase Jackson Davis. And can someone finally hit a three-point shot? It's 4 years, guys. I get it. Al Durham's a good three-point shooter. What else do we got here? I mean, Rob Fennessy's a guy that can hit it at times, but he needs to be a more confident shooter. Lander's a dude that needs to be able to hit threes. Jerome Hunter hit 40% of his threes in Big Ten play. Can he hit that at a higher volume and being a starter this year more than likely? Can Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis finally, after Archie Miller telling us for 3 years that those guys can shoot from the outside, can they actually shoot from the outside? Joey Brunk's not going to be able to do it, but I wouldn't expect him to be anyways. And then does Archie Miller have enough flexibility to play a small ball lineup when it's needed? I think the Race and Trace front court duo can be successful, but a lot of times I think there's going to be matchups, especially if you're playing, in Iowa, who only play one big with Luka Garza, or even a Michigan State this year who's going to play smaller. Wisconsin's a great example as well. You're going to have enough confidence to put Jerome Hunter at the 4 and play a 3-guard lineup with Durham, Fennessy, and Lander all in the game. And if Indiana can do that successfully, they can maybe be a top 25, maybe even make a Sweet 16. But I'm thinking 5, 6, 7-ish seed lines for Indiana. If you can make the tournament and win a tournament game, I think that'd be a good season for them.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting what you're saying about the small ball lineup for Indiana. I do think that is their ingredient or key to success this year, because I think that is their best lineup. To be honest, I think Joey Brunk, I think he's in there for defensive reasons, but I think he's more of a liability as far as the offensive side. I just don't think he adds a lot to that lineup. And I do think that with Race Thompson, who can stretch out, even Trace Jackson Davis, who I think we'll see him shoot the ball a little bit more from the outside this year. I know he was developing that mid-range shot last season, but guys like Durham and Fennessy there playing the guard spots, a guy like Lander you bring in, maybe Leo, you get if you can get a couple threes, maybe 2 a game from him, maybe 3, that would be, I think, more than enough. I think Archie Miller would love that. Because to add some sort of shooting from the outside off the bench.
Yeah, and freshmen are just such a crapshoot.
Yeah.
And unless you're a guy like Lander who's a blue chip that's expected to come in and play immediately, it's just, yes, I think Leo can be a good player in 2, 3, 4 years, but guys that you find normally in the 90s, the 110s, Rob Fennessy, who is in the 120s, I believe, is kind of the exception to that rule. He came in, started from basically day one, but a lot of times these guys aren't going to be stars or major contributors. You saw that with Armand Franklin last season, a guy that came in and had to start early on because Indiana had some injuries, but just wasn't really all that productive. By the end of the year, you really saw his minutes evaporate for the most part, only just a couple spot minutes here there. I think Franklin's a guy that we'll get someone outside of that core that can step in and hit some shots. He was terrible from three last year outside the Notre Dame game where he was phenomenal in Baker's life. Maybe Indiana should just play every game Baker. Like, if Indiana makes the tournament, it's all going to be in Indianapolis, and Franklin plays great in Indianapolis. That goes back to his high school days. So maybe that'll help him if they can make the tournament. But I think he's a guy you look from freshman to sophomore year. Can he make a jump and be a viable part of the rotation? I think that would be a huge boost for Indiana if he could do that.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit on this podcast the last couple of weeks on Archie Miller and kind of where he stands going into his fourth full season.
Yes.
And I would say I think it's fair to say, I mean, definitely that Indiana was making the NCAA tournament. I think the athletic department realizes that and understands it. But I mean, I don't know. I think the pressure's still on Miller here to deliver. I mean, who knows how far they would have advanced. And I mean, as you know, he's a great recruiter, and I think he's proven that. I mean, you get a guy like Romeo Langford, then you get a guy like Jackson Davis. Now you get a guy like Christian Lander to reclassify. I mean, he's bringing in talent, but I guess the production on the court, I don't know if it's maybe been to the level that maybe fans would like to see at this point. So is the verdict still out on Archie Miller, you think? And how important and crucial is this season to maybe his future beyond at Indiana for years to come?
When you look at player development under Archie Miller, what have we seen? We saw Juwan Morgan get a heck of a lot better and turn himself into an NBA player. We've seen Aljamain Durham go from a bad three-point shooter to be able to jump from, I think, like 32% his freshman year. I think he was up at 38 or 39. But other than that, who's gotten better in Archie Miller's tenure? I mean, Rob Finney hasn't made significant strides. Jerome Hunter, I get it, was hurt 2 years ago, so we'll get to see that first glimpse this season, what he can do, and really his first full, I'm not even going to call it a normal offseason because of the pandemic, but Race Thompson was kind of, I mean, he does a lot of intangibles, but I think he did that even in the glimpses we saw his freshman year. I think the biggest difference was he played more. Or, I mean, Trace Jackson Davis, we'll have to see on that, but I mean, we haven't seen too many people get better drastically, I think. And this is going to be a big year for him to prove that he can develop talent here at Indiana, because there are a lot of question marks and guys that Indiana needs to be significantly better than they were a year before for them to be successful. And yes, I get it that they were going to make the NCAA tournament. They were going to be a 9 or a 10 seed last year. This is Indiana basketball, though. Do you think 3 years, if you told me 3 years ago when they hired Archie Miller, that you would have Romeo Langford and Trace Jackson Davis, yet all you would have out of those two guys through 3 years is a 10 seed in year 3? Do you think anyone would have been happy with that?
No.
And so, I mean, yes, I get it. Other things have happened to where, yes, Jerome Hunter gets hurt the Romeo year. Yes, they had some injuries. Yes, they were never making the tournament in year 1 with that roster, but it's been disappointing. And I think if there wasn't a pandemic right now to where schools are kind of handcuffed financially for the most part, this would be a make or break year for Archie Miller, to where I would view it as, okay, you have to prove something to me this year that we haven't seen in the previous 3. And I think they're going to be better. I think, again, like a 7-8 seed type of team, maybe even win a game in the tournament, but it's they have a long way to go. And I think there was a hope that he would be able to have them in a better place than they are right now. This will, of course, though, be his best team yet. And because of the pandemic, I do think he does get an extra couple of years to work it out. And I am way more on the negative side than most of the fan base because he's been able to recruit Indiana so well. But, I mean, like, even that's a thing. He loses Trey Goffman to Purdue, Noah First also to Purdue. Matt Painter has the top 2 guys in the state of Indiana this year, this next recruiting cycle. So big question marks is, can he get Aminu Muhammad and Mason Miller? If he can get both those guys, then not only does that make it okay that you don't get Trey Kaufman, but also proves a big question mark. You praised his recruiting, but the recruiting outside of the state hasn't been good. Everything he's gotten has been inside the state of Indiana. So if he can get those 2 guys, that makes up for not getting Trey Kaufman and also shows, hey, maybe I can recruit outside the state. So I think that would be a really big development if he could get one or both of those guys.
And even I think about the transfers that he's brought in. They really haven't, done all that much. I mean, Evan Fitzner, that didn't really pan out. Joey Brunk has been so I mean,
the
I don't know.
Marquette game, the Evan Fitzner, the Marquette game. Can we just picture that for a moment and just remember that, and then just ignore the rest of his time? Yes, but yeah, that he definitely did not work out. Joey Brunk's been absolutely better than Evan Fitzner. He's not a perfect player, by any means, but at least he's a guy that Archie Miller can trust to give some minutes. I would argue probably too many minutes at some points, but a guy that is absolutely a guy you can throw on the floor for some stretches and does things well too.
So I guess as we wrap up our talk in Indiana here, I mean, what's their ceiling this season, and where do you see them kind of falling into the mix of a competitive Big Ten where you have an Iowa at the top, and Maryland will be good, Michigan State. Rocket Watts, I think he's really good, and they got some other pieces. I mean, where does Indiana kind of fall into the mix?
I saw them in there around 6 or 7. The Big Ten's loaded this year. You mentioned in Michigan State, Rocket Watts, they bring back Aaron Henry as well. Illinois is my pick to win the Big Ten with Ayo and Kofi Coburn. Yeah. Wisconsin and Iowa will have a hell of a lot to say about that. That's for sure. Michigan State will as well. And then Rutgers is a team that would have made the big dance last year for the first time in a long time. They bring back 4 of their 5 starters, add a top 50 recruit. They still have Geo Baker. They still have Ron Harper. That team's going to be a legitimate top 15, top 20 team this year. That's really weird to say about Rutgers basketball, but they are going to be a lot of fun to watch, really great defensively as well. But I think Indiana can kind of slide in, be in that next tier maybe with a Michigan, with an Ohio State, to where their tournament teams are not quite as good as that upper echelon, but they can beat any team on any given night.
Yeah, so Indiana, their season starts in about 5 days on Wednesday against Tennessee Tech. So we'll see. We'll see. There'll be a lot to talk about for sure. But
looking forward to Maui for sure not next week, but the week after as well. They're going to get tested out there. I'm disappointed they're not getting Alabama in that second game if they beat Providence. But Texas could give them a real test. Then Alabama or North Carolina could really be a real test also.
What, Maui is now Asheville, North Carolina, I believe?
Yes, the Asheville Invitational.
They're actually going east for this tournament, which is ridiculous. But whatever, that's the year we're living in. But Jack, you mentioned it. The NCAA tournament's going to be entirely in Indianapolis. Maybe there might be a few games even at Mackey Arena and Assembly Hall. That's to come. Maybe high school gyms I saw have been thrown out.
That's not happening because the high school gyms are smaller than the college gyms.
Okay.
So that's just. I'm sorry to everyone that wants that to happen. It's not happening. Stop talking about it.
Well, all right. Aside from high school gyms, then Banker's Life and who knows, maybe Lucas Oil. They transform that. Who knows? But what do you think of this? I mean, this idea. Obviously, they want to kind of keep all these teams in close proximity, due to the virus and limit travel and spread. So, do you see this working out?
This is the best way to do it. I really think so. Yeah. I mean, we have no clue what the heck the situation's going to look like in March. Maybe everything's fixed. I don't think so, but maybe everything's fixed by then. Yeah. But I mean, you would much rather err on the side of caution than on the other extreme. And this is absolutely the right move by the NCAA to put everyone in one centralized location, keep it a controlled environment, and that's what we've seen work with sports, with the NBA and the NHL specifically. College football hasn't done that, and yes, they'd be able to play the majority of their games, but there's been way more cancellations and postponements in that sport than any other, and that's because they're the only sport that's not playing regionalized. They're not playing in a bubble, and they're trying to just kind of go ho-hum business as usual for the most part. Major League Baseball, even though they didn't play in a bubble, even though they did for the playoffs, but they didn't play in a bubble in the regular season, but they at least had the regionalized aspect of it to where teams weren't traveling very far. In college football, you say, oh, well, we're doing conference play. This isn't the 1980s anymore where every conference is in the same region. You have the Big Ten stretching from Rutgers to Nebraska. That's not exactly in the same region of football game. The SEC goes from Texas A&M to Florida, Missouri to Florida, Missouri to Georgia. I mean, these conferences stretch out throughout the entire landscape of the map. I mean, the Big 12 is from West Virginia to the Texas schools. I mean, come on, guys. But I do think college basketball doing this is the safest way to get the tournament played, because they need to get the tournament played from a money standpoint. I do wish that we would see more of this go for conference season think we've seen a little bit with the MTE formats in the non-conference. You know, Maui's a quasi bubble. Louisville's doing an MTE. Kentucky's doing an MTE. You know, where I really do think it probably would have been the smartest thing to try to do like a Big Ten bubble or an ACC bubble for a month or something. A little disappointed we're not going to see that, but this is the right choice for the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, definitely, and it'll be right pretty close to here. I mean, I think as you know, being in Bloomington next semester, I'm hoping there'll be maybe a lot of opportunities to go around. You know, with obviously a lot of games, and it'll be great for the surrounding region as well. So you mentioned Illinois in your preseason, you know, Final Four picks, but this was part of kind of a later question I had for you. So I guess you have Illinois in there. So who would be your other three teams at the moment?
I'd probably go. I've been in the process of fleshing out what I want to do. I haven't totally done it yet, but I think I'm going Illinois, Virginia, Villanova, and Kentucky as my four. I really like those four. I think Baylor and Gonzaga I think will be great as well. Wouldn't shock me if either of those teams made it either, but that's the four I'm kind of honing in on.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's a lot of things there. I mean, we've seen a Virginia team, you know, go from losing to the 16 seed and this school and trying to think of their name. I don't remember their name. You remember their name?
Yes. It was
UMBC. Yeah. UMBC. Yeah. To winning a national title. Villanova's been dominant late. I like it. You got some blue bloods, and also a team like Illinois who would come on the radar. I don't know. It's hard for me to say. I'll be honest. It's been so long since my mind's been on college basketball that I got to see a little bit first. But I don't know.
But that's the beauty of it. You're going in. That's part of it. Like even if you're like me and you try to prepare for a season, you're still just going in blindly.
That's true. I don't know. I would say I usually like Michigan State. I actually think they're a decent team. What they only lose at? Well, I mean they do.
Xavier Tillman.
They lose Tillman and Cassius Winston. So.
Yeah. I mean, and not getting Tillman back, I think, is a really big loss because they were expecting to lose Cassius Winston as a graduating senior, but losing Tillman, I think, is really going to hurt them, and their front line isn't going to be anything close to what we are used to seeing under Tom Izzo.
I really like Iowa for some reason. Like they're
going to shooters score everyone. I mean, people forget Jordan Bohannon's coming back this year.
He's like the Perry Ellis of basketball. I feel like this year. I feel like he's been around forever. Wait, he's still on the roster?
But I mean, to add the National Player of the Year with arguably the clutchest player in college basketball, Jordan Bohannon, is a very deadly combination. The question is, can they defend anyone? Fred McCaffrey's teams can't defend, and if they are to make a Final Four run this year, they're going to have to eventually stop someone. They can't win every single game 90-85, though they're going to win a lot of them 90-85. Iowa might be the most fun team to watch in college basketball this year. I'm super excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go off the cuff here and say I think maybe the Big Ten gets 2 Final Four teams this year, which I think the Big Ten is it's probably the deepest conference.
Oh yeah, it's going to be the best. It's going to be the best conference in college basketball this year. You have the depth with it that they could have as many as 8 or 9, maybe even 10 teams make the NCAA tournament again this year, and then you have legit title contenders in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan State.
Yeah. There's a lot there, so we'll see how it goes here. But I mean. Lots of college basketball, and that starts next this coming week, actually.
Yes, this Wednesday.
On Wednesday, so I know you'll be watching. I mean, you watch every game religiously, so yeah, seriously. But I'm ready to talk some football because I think the big program right here in Bloomington involves the Tom Allen's program, the Indiana Hoosiers, and obviously big game, the big noon. We got Gus Johnson, who I love. I can't wait for that call. Joe Clark.
Best.
Yeah, it's the best. Like I love noon kickoffs, honestly, more than late games. Like you get it out of the way. As far as the media goes, I mean, you gotta there's a couple hours after the game too. So I like it. I'm all about the noon game, big game against Ohio State. There's
pluses and minuses to every kickoff. That's the kind of where I view it. I like that Gus Johnson's on the call. I'll put it that way. I like that it's on national TV and Fox.
Sure. So we have some highlights here. We'll run these, but obviously Indiana against Michigan State last week, dominant. I mean, they're doing a lot of things that haven't been done by an Indiana program ever. I mean, they beat Michigan State, Penn State, and Michigan all in the same season. And yes, And I part of this is those teams, they don't seem very good this year. I mean, they don't. So I'm in between. Okay, do I give Indiana the credit they deserve, which I'd like to, or is it more that these teams are just bad? I mean, Penn State is winless still, which I cannot believe. With a Sean Clifford and Pat Fryermuth, who I think's the top tight end in the nation. You got a team like Michigan who's really bad, really bad. And I don't understand that one. Michigan State, new coach transition. I could have maybe seen this coming. And Rutgers, 1-3. I'd say Rutgers might be the second best team they played. Maybe one of the best teams they played this year, which is kind of crazy to say. I mean, I like what Greg Schiano's done there, but yes, they're 1-3 as well. So I don't know. It's like, where does Indiana kind of stand? And do you have any clue how Saturday is going to go?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about that, Jordan, and the teams Indiana have played have combined 3-13 record. Ohio State's victories are only teams that are 2-9. So, I mean, they're not, it's not any better with them. This is the first real test for both of these teams. I do think the line, which has been talked so much of, 21.5, I think it's a fair line, just from the standpoint of, yes, Ohio State is the bigger name brand. That's who the public is automatically going to draw to. And yes, even though Indiana is vastly more talented than they've ever been, there still is a gap there between Indiana and Ohio State. So that line doesn't bother me at all. And if you're one of those people that are offended by the line, great, go bet it. You have every right that you can to bet it. That you should always be happy when your team gets a line that you think is completely BS and is unfair, because you can take advantage and make money off that line. But I do think that Indiana has a path to win this game, but it's a very long and winding path, and they need a lot to happen. The number one thing I think they need to do is they can't be dominated on the offensive line like they were last season against the Buckeyes. They got to be able to get some push, give Michael Penix time to throw the ball. And I get it. He's a guy that has a quick release, is great at getting the ball out quick. But in order to beat Ohio State, they're going to need to complete passes at all three levels of the field, short, intermediate, and hit a couple of deep shots. In order to make those intermediate and deep throws, Penix needs time to throw the ball. And if he doesn't have that, you can't make those plays. If you can't make those plays, then that allows the Ohio State secondary to creep back in and take away the quick hitting game as well. So the number one thing is Indiana's offensive line has to at least hold its own against the Buckeyes' defensive front, which isn't as good as it was last year without Chase Young anymore, but is still a very, very, very good unit. And then on the other side of the ball, they got to be able to force some turnovers. They have the best interception percentage in the country, but they're facing the quarterback that turns it over less often than anyone else. Justin Fields has 3 career interceptions, and none of them are this year, correct, Jordan?
Yeah, all 3 last year. Yep.
But when you look at it, the 3 picks that he has, as an Ohio State starter, he is 16-1. The only game he has lost, he threw 2 of his 3 picks in. Yes, I get it. It was against Clemson, and that's by far
the game I went to.
Yeah,
I went to that game. I was at the college football playoff. Yeah.
1, I'm sorry. 2, I am jealous. But
it's the last sporting event I've been to with fans. It was amazing. I miss it. It was this year somehow, I think, or no, late December,
31st. The 31st.
Okay. Yeah.
But that I do think that even though a lot else went into that game, it's not a coincidence that the only game Justin Fields has lost as a Buckeye starter is the only game he's thrown multiple interceptions in. And yes, I get it. Picks aren't the only way you can force turnovers. You can force fumbles. You can get stuff on special teams. But Indiana's best way of forcing turnovers is by picking the ball off. So it comes down to, can Indiana hold its own on the offensive line, and can they force some mistakes from Justin Fields, who hasn't made many. As I said, no picks on the season, 11 incompletions, 11 touchdowns through 3 games. Insane stat. I just don't know if they can do that. That's not a knock on the Indiana defense. That's just a credit to how damn good Justin Fields is.
All right, here I go. So, yes, the offensive line, that's going to be a big thing. I watched what they did against Michigan State, and really what gave Penix and that offense success in the first half was he had a lot of time in the pocket. And that's something, I'm watching Michael Penix, and, we saw what he was able to do against Penn State. He was a playmaker. He's able to get outside, and obviously that's how they beat Penn State, and the 2-point conversion. He had to scramble and make a play himself. I really wish he did more of that. He seems he's just so tied into the pocket. Maybe they're a little worried about running and the injury history last season. But
I go back to a quote from I think this was week 2 or 3 media availability from last season, where someone asked Penix about, it was after week one against Ball State, where he led Indiana in rushing. He had like 70 yards in that game on the ground.
Right.
And someone asked him, why don't you scramble more? You're a mobile guy. Yeah. How would you describe yourself from that standpoint? And he goes, I'm not someone who views myself as a dual threat quarterback. I'm a guy that likes to stand in the pocket and run if I have to. And I really think that fits him better, to be honest. One, there is the injury history. You don't want him taking many hits, but I really do think that's kind of been a misconception with everything that went through with him and Ramsey. Ramsey is the more mobile of the two. There's Penix is a guy that can run, but isn't a great runner. It's a lot of, and you'll get this from being a Louisville guy, Jordan. It's very similar to kind of like Teddy Bridgewater, to where he can run. He doesn't always want to run. He's not exactly Lamar Jackson or Tyler Murray out there, but he's a guy that can get it done when he has to, but he would rather not.
So get this. So I just happened to flipping through channels yesterday on ACC Network. They had a Louisville Syracuse football game, and Teddy Bridge from like 2013 when like Louisville's ranked number 9. Charlie Strong was there, and Teddy Bridgewater was the quarterback. And I couldn't believe how much he was scrambling, like you were saying. Like I'm like he runs when he has to. Yeah, a very similar kind of style. I agree.
Yeah, especially early in his career at Louisville, he ran a lot. It was really later that he kind of honed into the pocket passer that he's become in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. But like I was saying, the offensive line. I mean, Caleb Jones and Mike Kadich there at left tackle, I believe. I mean, they're both kind of questionable tags, so that'll hurt. And then a guy on the defensive side, like a Cam Jones, who has stepped in and made some great plays. He's questionable as well. So you lose a guy like Thomas Allen, who wasn't a starter. Obviously, Micah McFadden fits that role. As well as a guy like Fitzgerald there at Husky. But, yeah, I mean, they're losing a little bit of depth, and that'll certainly sting a little bit because, obviously, injuries will start to pile up. I mean, we've seen it even in the NFL where you have a team like, San Francisco, as talented as they are, eventually the injuries are piling up on the defensive side.
And that's just football. That's just
football. Yeah. Right. And it started with Marcelino Ball, who I think was he was an important player. I mean, a lot of people kind of mixed on him, like, the defense actually has looked really good. I mean, obviously, they shut out Michigan State. Their first non-Rutgers shutout. And
just 93.
Like 93, exactly. So the defense is really good. And by the way, I do think Ken Womack, I think he will be a head coach very soon. I don't see Indiana holding on to him a whole lot longer.
Yeah, and that's a good thing when your coordinators become head coaches. We saw last season with Kalen DeBoer as well. I mean, that means you're doing something right. Not very often does Indiana lose its coordinators to become head coaches. And even, the strength staff as well is now down at Alabama. When you're losing guys to bigger programs, that's the type of turnover, the type of replacement you want to see as a head coach with Tom Allen. And that's when you're doing something well, when other programs are trying to poach your coaches.
Sure. And you got a guy like Nick Sheridan who steps in now, and I think he's the youngest offensive coordinator in the conference. So a lot of youth there and a lot of experience at the top with Tom Allen. But, yeah, I think this game is going to be – I think it will be close. I mean, and it wouldn't be surprising, I don't think, to it because, I mean, aside from last year where they did get blown out, Indiana has played Ohio State pretty well for, since 2013. And I was reading, like – the problem has been the second half against them. They continually get smoked in the second. Like Indiana hasn't won a second half against Ohio State since I think 2012, where they outscored them. So I mean, every year
that was the 52-49 game, wasn't it? The 2012 game.
I think it was that or the one right before it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah. So again, I mean, they have to find a way to finish, right? And that's something that we've seen this year. They've been able to do. I mean, really, they've only played one close game from start to finish this season. That was Penn State. But really the offense has to come alive for a lot longer than it has. I mean, I feel like this year, maybe aside from Michigan, where I think they probably played their best game offensively, definitely, it's really been spurts. I mean, we saw against Penn State where they really didn't come alive until the fourth quarter, right? And then we saw against a team like Rutgers where the Rutgers was just kind of hanging in there with Indiana for a while. And then against Michigan, where they actually did look good finally. But then again, against Michigan State, you look great in the first half, but then all of a sudden you're nowhere to be found. And finally, that red zone scoring streak kind of snaps where you just can't finish.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Jordan, because I think in the Rutgers game, yes, they started off really, really slow, but they played really good football the final 3 quarters against the Scarlet Knights, putting up 37 points in 3 quarters. That's pretty damn good. So that game doesn't worry me too much. Penn State, I kind of throw out the window a little bit because it was Michael Penix's first game in almost a full year. There was clearly a lot of rust he did off it. And I think that goes into the Rutgers game as well. Just him trying to find a rhythm for the first time after not playing football for so long impacted him a lot in the Penn State game and even early in the Rutgers game. Then look at Michigan State. I think a big key for Dean, this will be a key on Saturday. When they've had success, they've thrown the ball on first down. Against Michigan, by far the best offensive game they've had all year. They threw the ball on first down 63% of the time. And the first half against Michigan State, they threw the ball on first down on 67% of the time. They scored 24 points. In the second half, though, I think it was almost like they were just kind of trying to send the ball a little bit more than they were in the first half, just trying to eat out the clock, kill the clock, get to the end of the game almost. They ran the ball 80% of the time on first down against Michigan State in the second half, and they only got 3 yards per carry off those gains. And I think Stevie Scott had 1 gain of 11, maybe another gain of 8. Other than that, though, a lot of 2nd and 8s, a lot of 2nd and 9s, couple 2nd and 11s. Indiana not winning that battle again with the offensive line in the run game to where they just don't run the ball well on first down. So Indiana needs to use the passing game to set up the run on first down against Ohio State. And then the other thing, Indiana's offense has been great in 2 aspects. They're opportunistic. They take advantage of turnovers, which I don't know how much that'll play into Saturday, as we talked about earlier, but also they make plays when they need to and when it matters most. You saw that in the Penn State game. You saw that in the Michigan game. The 2 touchdowns Indiana had in the second half against Michigan came right after Michigan had scored touchdowns to get the game back to 10 points and give them a feeling of, okay, maybe we have a shot to come back. The Indiana offense says nope, marches down the field and scores both times. So Indiana makes plays when they have to, and they're extremely opportunistic. So I think especially the first part of that, making plays when they have to, is something that's going to come into play a bunch against Ohio State. They may have to do that more than when they've had to early on in the season, but when their backs are up against the wall, Indiana's done a great job of making the right play.
I agree. And I think Penix will have to definitely sling the ball out a lot this game. I mean, running the ball.
Penix slings it.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That was bad. But he threw the ball 50 times against Michigan. I would not be shocked at all if he threw the ball 50 more times against the Buckeyes.
Yes. Yeah. And he might have to. I mean, the way that I've been looking, Stevie Scott, when he does have good games, typically it's against like average or below average run defenses. And I've looked what he's been able to do. I don't remember his Michigan line.
It wasn't great last year, but his freshman year, he had 138 yards against Penn State, and I think 122 against Michigan. I think I might have those flipped, but he was over 120, 130 yards against both those teams. The biggest difference is the O-line doesn't get him any push. I mean, Stevie Scott, I don't blame any of the issues. I mean, yes, could he bump it outside every once in a while? Probably, but most of the issues in the run game have come from the fact that Indiana's offensive line just doesn't get any push.
I mean, it looks like David Montgomery out there. I mean, you've seen the Bears. Yeah. I mean, he runs 2 yards and boom, falls over. Yeah. That's it. That's all you get.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, but so I mean, obviously, a win would be monumental. I mean, a lot of things. I mean, who knows what will happen? But let's say Indiana does get the win here against Ohio State. I mean, what does this prove, I guess, for this program, maybe that they haven't already? I mean, I think there still are doubters. Granted, they are number 9 in the country. It's their highest ranking since like 67, I believe. So, I mean, what would this mean?
This is the biggest game in the history of the IU football program.
I agree.
And first of all, it's the only top 10 matchup they've ever played in. So I guess that's kind of easy to say. But if they could win this game, they become one of the favorites to make the college football playoff. Because you can't.
Did you really just say that? Like,
yes.
I know.
Yes, and it sounds very weird, but it's true. If Indiana can find a way to win this game, there is a full expectation that they will make the college football playoff. It's as simple as that. Yes, there's still Still tough games to come. Wisconsin's going to be really tough in Madison. Purdue's much improved from last year. Maryland's 2-1. Then you would still have the Big Ten title game. But if you can win this game, you are in the driver's seat to make the Big Ten title game, to win the Big Ten championship, and to represent the Big Ten in the college football playoff.
Yes, and a lot of things do have to happen. Like,
yes.
It's like boom, boom, boom. Yeah, we made it sound easy, but no. I mean, a win here, and then I'm rooting for Northwestern to beat the Badgers this weekend. I'm all for a Peyton Ramsey, Michael Penix matchup there in the Big Ten.
That'd be a lot of fun. It honestly might be a little ugly because it's the two best defenses in the Big Ten, so it may not be a lot of points, but I'm sure a lot of people would love to see Penix and Ramsey go at each other.
Yeah. As far as Tom Allen, obviously, I know he just signed the big extension to stay here. What was it, another 6 years or something like that? But I mean, Indiana having really a lot of success this year, and he's doing a ton of interviews and things like that. Do you think, is there any way that Tom Allen leaves? I mean, is that something that's really something that fans should be worried about, or do you think he's here to stay for a while?
I don't know. I mean, I kind of err on the side of he's committed long term, just from listening to him talk for 4 years now. We kind of leave that to be, but money talks, and even in times like this, people got money. So you could give him more. Indiana could give him another raise if needed, but I wouldn't be stunned if he left. But based off of everything he said up to this point about how committed he seems to be, I wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. So, you mentioned earlier that Indiana would kind of they beat Ohio State, and then the path to the college football playoff is a little more clear. But obviously I think they have to beat Ohio State for it to even be considered, right? I mean, the top two teams in the Big Ten East right now.
Well, I think there is a path. They would need a lot of help if they lose Ohio State, which I do think they will lose Ohio State. But if they could lose in a very close game, very competitive game, to where they are really in the game the entire time, lose by one possession, you could say, okay, they proved themselves that they are still legit, even though they didn't win the game. So at that point, you would need a lot more to happen. You would need probably Texas A&M to lose, Florida to lose, Notre Dame maybe even to lose twice, BYU, Cincinnati. You might need them to lose. You can't have an undefeated team in the Pac-12. A lot of different things would need to happen.
I don't want to see Cincinnati in the college football playoff. I don't.
Hey, they're fun, man. They're fun.
I mean, they got Desmond Ritter, the St. X Louisville guy, but I don't know. I mean, does anyone really want to see a non-Power 5 conference school? Maybe. I mean, okay, all right.
I mean, come on, give them a chance, man.
I watched a little of it against East Carolina. I don't know. I just want to see them play a legit team. Maybe they got Indiana on the schedule next year, right?
Yeah, that's good. Indiana has some fun home and homes. I mean, Cincinnati's going to lose a lot of their defense before next season. They may not be the same team, but Indiana, Cincinnati, the next 2 years, that's not your normal bye game. That's not playing UConn like they were supposed to this year.
I think Cincinnati, it was last season, they played Ohio State, and they got absolutely smoked in that game. And I think it was only one of their only losses. But still, I mean, I think that, to me, that showed a lot right there. I mean, imagine, you see Clemson, Notre Dame. I mean, how crazy of a game that was. Clemson without Trevor Lawrence even, in the game, and they have a couple defensive starters missing, and they're still able to take it overtime on the road and make it a close game.
Jordan, you're talking like such an Ohio State fan right now. I mean, let's take Cincinnati out. BYU. It's the same story, BYU, but there's no emotional but I say that not just because it's Cincinnati, but because the Power 5, the elite brands that get every benefit of the doubt. Let's open it up. Let give someone else a chance. I mean,
okay. You know what I say to that? I say expand the college football playoff.
Yes, I agree. It's a stupid setup to where you have 4 teams in the playoffs and 5 major conferences. Yeah. Give me an 18 playoff, the automatic qualifiers, winners of each major conference, best group of 6 team, and 2 at-larges. That's all you got to do.
My thing is, okay, a 2-loss Georgia team, for instance, I think Cincinnati deserves it over a 2-loss SEC or Power 5. So 1 loss, close game, okay. I'd say it's a little debatable, and obviously there's been those debates with the 1-loss teams getting in the playoffs, in recent years. But I don't know. I mean, again, I think eventually, like you said, money does talk. So I do see the playoff getting expanded at some point. But yeah, I think Indiana loses this game. They will need a lot of help, but certainly They do have Wisconsin and the regular season on their schedule later in the year. And obviously they would play the top team, or say they do win the Big Ten East in the West. Maybe that means Northwestern or Wisconsin again. So there's a lot of, there's a couple, really good games still on the schedule for Indiana the rest of the way.
Yeah, there is. I mean, it didn't look like it at the beginning of the season, but the back half of the schedule is much harder than the front half with Ohio State. And then obviously you said Wisconsin and Purdue is much improved as well. They're 2-1 right now, and even Maryland's 2-1. So I mean, it's going to be a tough back half for the Hoosiers. They should win the Maryland and Purdue games. Wisconsin, I view as a toss-up, and then obviously there's the game Saturday.
Yeah. So Jack, I guess what's your prediction for tomorrow's game?
I'm going Ohio State 38, Indiana 24. So I do think they cover the spread. They hang around for a while, but too much Justin Fields. And you know what? A lot of times in modern sports, we say this more on a basketball side, but I think it applies to football too. Great offense just trumps great defense sometimes. And if you can do everything right for Indiana, but Justin Fields can still just throw a perfect dime to Chris Olave, nothing's going to matter. So I just think Ohio State's too much, but I think Indiana will be respectable. And I do think that they can still accomplish a whole heck of a lot this season, even without beating Ohio State.
I do think Indiana will cover.
They already have accomplished a lot.
Yeah, I do think Indiana will cover the spread. I mean, we saw against Penn State winning by 13, and then Rutgers. Yeah, they were up 35-3 at half, but like Rutgers, played a really good second half against them and made it a relatively competitive, a respectable score. So I do think that Indiana will come within that 20.5, but I do have a similar score. I think Ohio State 45, Indiana 27, something like that. I think Ohio State gets in the 40s. I agree with you. Good offense does beat great defense, but with that being said, I think this defense is extremely talented for Indiana. Best secondary, I think Ohio State will face the rest of the way with the corners. I mean, think about all the playmakers that they have: Reese Taylor, Jalen Williams, Tywan Mullen there, and they have a guy like Munster, Devon Matthews out there in safety. So they have a lot of really good. Jamar Johnson, obviously, a lot of great playmakers. Micah McFadden, we've already mentioned as well. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Can they get pressure on Justin Fields, forcing him to make maybe some poor decisions? That's really going to be the difference. And also, you saw how poorly Michigan was as far as penalties go, and that really killed them and kind of didn't really give them any chance to win that game. If Ohio State looks a little sloppy, who knows? It's been a couple weeks, but at the same time, more time to prep for Indiana. I think, who knows? Maybe that plays to Indiana's favor. But I don't know, 45-27 is what I'm thinking. But either way, will be a fun game. Any final words?
It's a top 10 matchup. Who the heck cares what happens? We have a top 10 matchup for Indiana football. That's all that matters.
I agree. I'm 9 Indiana. It's still possible. With a 9-game schedule. With
9 Indiana actually meant 9 ranked Indiana.
Yeah. Hey, how about that? Who knew that's what it meant? Hey, we got an iconic play. Michael Penix, the pylon dive. I mean, I love that. My favorite play that I've seen as a student, and the joy here on campus.
Long term, no one will care that Penn State started 0-4 and Michigan was bad. They'll see the number 8 against Penn State when Penix reaches out for that pylon. They'll see Michigan and Indiana both being ranked, and Indiana having a higher ranking, and Indiana whipping their tails. That's all that will matter long term. I
know. Well, Jack, thanks for coming on, man. A lot of fun. You got a busy weekend ahead, and I know that your eyes will be glued to the TV all this weekend, and then as the college basketball season starts too. So a lot of fun stuff.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it. Anytime, buddy.
Cool. All righty. Well, that'll do it for us for the Take 3 podcast. Thank you, and of course, Thanksgiving next week, so we'll be off next week, but we'll be back wrapping up the semester with Anna. Great job, Anna. Again, thank you for the video and stuff. So we'll catch you later here, and big game this weekend. Enjoy. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.